talk about blockers for a minute, because this isn't a database performance problem. Really, it's a perceived problem, which is more application related. Do you want to go with this one?
Well, absolutely. You know, reader client will not block other readers. But if someone is writing data, maybe they're doing an update statement or an insert or a delete, any page that they have as a part of their transaction blocks everyone else. And so if that person isn't quick about completing their transaction, especially if the developers have written their application code in a way where it keeps the transaction open until there's some kind of response from the client,
The
you could
worst.
have lots of, yeah, it could be a massive blocking chain of people blocking people, just because someone didn't click OK when they were finished making all their changes. So it could be a disaster if not carefully managed.
And that is actually one of the things that gets picked up by this tool, those idle blockers, the concept of creating a lock and then not closing it out and just waiting for something to happen. There's no CPU spinning, but this process is blocking. And we have the ability to help track that down, which is has saved a lot of time with a lot of my clients. Moving into log weights. So one of the problems that you run into is at the database level. So you've been a DBA for half of forever. I've been a DBA for half of forever. Actually, if you just consider the lifetime of SQL Server, I'd say 3/4 to 9/10 of forever, right? And over the course of that time, you run into problems, you get burned by those problems, and you build a process around it. And this was the first tool that I saw that gave me access to a problem that was recurring in an easy way. So do you want to define a VLF? Would you like me to?
Well, a VLF is a virtual log file. And so SQL Server, as it's writing transactions, it writes as a transaction log. And if it has to grow, you probably have the default setting of auto growth, which means it'll add a small amount of additional space. And it will have to auto grow over and over and over again. Each of those auto grows is a VLF. And so the biggest I've ever seen that number grow to is between 50 and 60,000. How about you, Jeff?
We saw one once up in the 400,000 range. And that was certainly an anomaly. But as you start thinking of the numbers that Kevin and I are throwing around, be aware that you can start running into problems with VLFs in the 20 to 80 range. Not 20 to 80,000, but 20 to 80 VLFs. And the reason for that is every time the SQL Server tries to commit a transaction, it looks for the best place to do it. And these virtual log files were a great concept because it gives you multiple entry points into the log. So 2,000 people all hitting commit at the same time, all hitting enter at the same time. If they're all trying to write to the same log page, you've got a serious hotspot, right? But if we have multiple entry points, we got multiple hotspots, and that's going to save a lot of blocking. But if we're going to spend 2 seconds or 5 seconds trying to find the right VLF and then spending 2 milliseconds trying to write, there's a disconnect there, right?
Absolutely. And it gets even worse if you ever have to restore a database, including the transaction log restore. I had one customer that had a 2 terabyte database. It took many hours to back it up, many hours to restore. And they had in that close to 50,000 number of VLFs. So we rebuilt it so that it just used, in their case, they had 4 VLFs of many gigabytes in size. And it dropped the time to recover a database. And this is the time at which the CIO is pacing around in your cubicle and glaring at you.
And everybody else is throwing things at him or her, right?
Right. And it shaved 2 hours off the recovery time. So significant improvement when the chips are down.
I would say very significant. And then the other piece of it that I really like having a tool for is that you can look at history. So if you get a spike Here we have a spike in the memory paging rate, right? Well, is that normal or is that an aberration? Well, we can see that it's happening at a particular point in time, but the ability to go look at this historically, from my perspective, is pretty critical.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we talk about wait type analysis for a minute? You want to take a whack at this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So weights